Hello, world. It's Clinton here, and in this segment I call My Clue is Me, we're going to dig into some real ideas, starting with where conspiracy theorists always go wrong. Now, the internet definitely is a very captivating medium. It's easy to get lost when you're in social media talking to your friends, or you're on Twitter talking to celebrities. You are part of one of the biggest websites, the biggest internet communities in the world. But beyond that, through that, there's a million smaller websites, a million domains that you can go to. On YouTube, there's all the university lectures that you can imagine. There's all the conferences that you can imagine. Videotape footage of history of the past half century, even more. So, where conspiracy theorists go wrong is thinking that there's something hidden from them and go immediately looking for things that are being kept secret. Nothing is a secret. You just haven't learned all the publicly available knowledge that's strewn about all over the place, which has happened in broad daylight for the past 50, 60, 70, 80 years. Unless you've been in school studying a vast interdisciplinary web of things, then you don't know enough about what happens in reality already to start looking for what's being kept secret from you. And the best example I have of that is Marshall McLuhan. Maybe you've heard of him, maybe you haven't. I saw a television commercial every day on YTV here in Ontario, here in Canada, growing up. A Canadian heritage moment. And here's how it started.
TV sucks the brain right out of the skull.
Yeah, that's Marshall McLuhan. He was huge. Have you heard of Jordan Peterson, the U of T professor whose book is one of the number one selling books right now? Well, here he is on CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, being interviewed by Wendy Mesley a few weeks ago, and here's what she asked him.
So you've become this huge sensation. What's next for you? Like, I'm trying to figure out, are you the next Marshall McLuhan? Are you the next Billy Graham? Like, are you a prof, or are you
Billy McLuhan?
Yeah. So, who is Marshall McLuhan? Do you know? Have you bothered to look into it? Do you remember? Are you old enough to remember Marshall McLuhan when he was alive? Because I've been studying his stuff for past 6 months now, and I don't think anybody quite realizes exactly how relevant he is to everything going on right now. Marshall McLuhan talks about how if you don't understand the medium which is carrying content to you, like right now, you're watching me, the content. Hi, I'm Clinton, on a little screen on a computing device. If you don't understand the computing device and you're just thinking about me, then your senses, your perception, right now, you sitting here looking at me, is different than someone who understands the medium. Someone with a technical computer science and web design and telecommunication infrastructure knowledge, who is placing me right now in their head somewhere in the real world that they're currently existing in. If the most important thing to you is the casting of a movie based on, what you think the structures are subconsciously imbuing into people, if you think people are having, subconsciously by watching a movie, having different structures reinforced in their head, then you're thinking of people who are media illiterate. You're thinking of people who, when they're watching a movie, are all about the fiction of the story and they're entering the fictional world. But people who make movies, or who critically think about the production of movies, they, like me, I've made movies. As Marshall McLuhan says,
Well, the best way to learn the grammar of any form, or the way in which it is laid out, is to get involved in using it and making it. Obviously, children engaged in making a film turn to look at films with brand new eyes.
Movies are fantasies and dream worlds to people who don't break them down in terms of photography, cinematography, acting, directing, script writing, all that stuff. When you learn to do that by studying how movies are made and by studying the makeup of a media, then you're not going to get sucked into the dream world anymore. And it's not going to be a fantasy with your fictional characters who are so real, man. It's going to be something much better, something much more enjoyable, something richer, something real. And I think that's something worth learning and investigating on your own, because we all have cameras now. We can all create media, multimedia. And you don't want to be susceptible to getting sucked into dream worlds created by any random person. You want to be media literate. And you don't want to go trying to imagine the agenda of some nebulous group that controls large swaths of your life, because you control your life in this free world, and you choose what it is you're looking at, and you choose what it is you do in a day. Here's a book, came out in 1961. Physics of Television. I like to pretend I don't really know that Marshall McLuhan understood just what was in this book. It's got lots of complicated diagrams. Like here's a resistor. It talks about how electricity works. It talks about light and energy and all sorts of stuff. We got magnetic fields. It's the physics of how a television works. This is precisely exactly what I'm saying. You can get sucked into the fantasy of a fictional story on your television if you don't put the content of the television in an understanding of the medium. Back in the 60s, the newest, most newfangled medium was television, color television. Look, here's how a color television signal, an analog signal, is broken down into its constituent parts, which guide the little scan line inside the vacuum tube around to light up the phosphors on the screen. Marshall McLuhan writes wonderful poetry about the technical functioning of the television, the newfangled thing of his time. Now, I'd like to read you the last paragraph of this book. There are many people who eye further development of TV with suspicion and regret, and who regard it as little more than a softener of the brain. Certainly, to use TV purely as a form of entertainment for killing time and masking a fundamental boredom with life would be a gross prostitution of the scientific skill and inventiveness which have produced this marvel. But there are many constructive uses of TV, and perhaps it is not unduly pompous to say that someday, when it becomes woven into a worldwide network of communication, TV may prove a decisive influence in helping different nations to understand and tolerate each other. What a great little handy book, eh? I'd like to read you a poem, one of the better poems, of Peter Paul Van Camp. I think it's a delightful little poem. And I think it represents the opposite view. It's a little tongue-in-cheek here. It's called Mr. Can't Fix It. Mr. Can't Fix It, 1973. Machinery. What's it to me? I cannot make it out. Please don't try to explain to me what it is all about. Clanking gears and turbines whirring, pulleys lift and engines purring. This to mechanics may be alluring, but not to the likes of me. Hydraulic compressors, wire rope, welding, smelting, where is hope? Hoists and joists, capacitators, incapacitate me. Tiny parts that need adjustment, batteries caked with encrustment, tubes and wires and fuses just meant confusion for me. I'm but a poet, that is all. I have no taste for tinkering, unless it be with themes and rhyme. On these I'm ever thinkering. Machinery, what's it to me? I cannot make it out. Please don't try to explain to me what it is all about. Thank you, Peter Paul Van Camp. Oh yeah, that's right, an autographed edition, I know, right? If you want to talk about the culture wars today, or if you want to argue about postmodernism, or any of that stuff, then you better understand Marshall McLuhan. He was big. He was huge. He was huge because he explained how reading books give you an internal voice. When you're reading a book and your lips are shut and your eyes are scanning and there's a voice silently in your head, you're hearing a voice, a human voice, through your eyes. You're listening through your eyes instead of hearing someone talk to you, like has been true for thousands of years of human. Before books, stories were oral. We had oral tradition. With writing and then the printing press, how we took in information shifted around, and it shifts our senses, and various media affect us differently. And if you learn how the media works, and by which I mean media, I mean learn how cameras, just get an idea of how cameras work and how camera operators use them on a film set somewhere, and how all this wonderful, your favorite movies are just a bunch of people. And it's not some dream world that's creating structures in your head unless you let it be. And the way to not let yourself get affected by media is to place it in the reality in which it was produced through media literacy. As a child, the world is full of wonderful dreams and stories. And yet, as we grow up into our world surrounded by machines, in our cars and our planes and trains, and automobiles, and our computers, a little bit of media literacy. I'm not saying you have to learn all the details, just a notion, the gist of how they work and how they all connect our one world that you live in throughout your day, entering little pockets of it when you use a phone, and when you watch a television, or when you read a book, or when you pick up a newspaper, or when you enter a room and then you walk back outside again. You're always yourself, and you're always in the same world. And a little bit of media literacy, well-rounded media literacy, can lessen and halt the feeling of getting sucked into a world completely and then leaving it again, and then getting sucked into your phone and then leaving it again, and getting sucked into a movie and then leaving it again, which breaks up and fragments your day and might leave you a little more susceptible to advertisement, a little bit more susceptible to magical thinking. Jordan Peterson is popular today because he's encouraging you to go grow up. Clearly there's a big demand for people who want to grow up and take personal responsibility. Great. Personal responsibility is great. But if you're going to start questioning media narratives and start questioning the order of things, you have to first work on your perception of how it is people can sit around and watch movies and sit around and watch the news and read a newspaper and think about the content of those things while not perhaps being critical enough and being able to place how it is this information entered their head, how it is the medium itself got into their hands, how it is they chose to be watching this particular video or this particular movie at this particular time, how their day isn't broken up, how they choose to spend the hours in a day, and how they choose to see how those hours connect to each other, and how they all happen on this one wonderful planet we all share together. And I want to know what you think, and if you have any questions, let me know. Alright? Till next time, my clue is me. Talk to you later.